Okay, keep the chatter down in this room.
Pyros are on, buddy.
Roger. Okay, T1, stay, no stay. Retro.
Stay.
Vital.
Stay.
Guidance.
Stay.
Control.
Stay.
Telcom.
Stay.
GNC.
Stay.
Ecom.
Stay.
Surgeon.
Stay.
Capcom.
Charlie.
How are you doing?
Oh man, I'm honored to meet you.
Nice to meet you
How
too.
are you,
Joy.
man?
Fine, very, very good.
You're in shape.
I
You're
can
in really
still
good shape.
pass the physical. But NASA says don't call us, I'll call you.
They won't let you up there now. I couldn't have passed the physical when I was 20. How are you? Good?
Good, good.
The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
It's your voice that says, you know, a bunch of guys turning blue down here, right?
Yeah. During the descent, George, we had a lot of issues. Started having data drop out. And then we started having computer overloads. 1201 alarm, the 1202 alarm. Well, I mean, when I saw that on my console as Capcom, I said, we're dead in the water.
Right.
We're losing the computer. We're not going to be able to finish. So everybody just said, oh no. And they were going into, we had them targeted into a big boulder field. And so Neil had to level off. So it was a trajectory problem. Then it became a fuel problem because it took a lot more fuel to fly level and then slow down and then descend. So
Right.
we began to get really, really concerned about the fuel. And there were two final calls that you would hear from Mission Control, and that was Eagle 60 seconds. It had 60 seconds to land, or you would hear an abort call.
Right.
So I called Eagle 60 seconds.
60 seconds. 60 seconds.
Lights on.
30 seconds later, I called Eagle 30 seconds.
And after 30.
4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little.
30. 30
Down
seconds.
a half.
And they were close to landing, but not on the ground. And according to my watch, about 13 seconds later, they landed. Well, the tension, you can imagine the tension in Mission Control. It was going through the roof. Everybody was glued to their consoles, listening and just to Buzz as he was talking them down. And it got very, very tense in Mission Control.
Was the fear that they would crash by running out of power, or was the fear that they couldn't get back off?
The fear was we had a margin of 4%, and when you said abort, you still had 4% fuel remaining,
Right.
which you would throttle up and start a positive rate of climb away from the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd lost your landing.
Right.
And then engine would shut down, and the ascent engine would light and take you back into orbit.
Wow.
So the 4% actually was a little margin, and so we didn't get to Eagle abort. But had we gotten to that point, I'm convinced Neil Armstrong would have said, "Say again, Houston."
Just gone.
He would have landed because he had 4% fuel remaining.
Yeah. And he knew.
And he knew.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things.
Kennedy, with this bold statement, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to land on the moon, and we're going to return safely by the end of 1969. So I laughed at him, we got 15 minutes in space and he's going to go to the moon in 8.5 years. But I look back now, George, and the most amazing thing was 8 years and 2 months later, I'm sitting in Mission Control talking to Neil Armstrong when he landed. He did it.
I mean, it's just an incredible accomplishment. This stands out as one of the greats of all time.
To have had that opportunity to participate in that historic program was just an incredible experience and privilege.
So now let's talk about you going to the moon, the Apollo 16, and you getting to walk on the moon, one of 12 people ever. You know, if you think of great adventures, there aren't many that only 12 people have been on.
My dad was born in 1907, 4 years after the Wright brothers.
Right.
And he grew up watching that progression of aviation. Mm-hmm. And he fell in love with Apollo once I got selected, and he'd come down for every launch. And he could not believe that his son was going to walk on the moon. It was just incredulous to him. So when we got out, we were really excited, and my first steps were just, I'm here, fantastic, I'm finally on the moon. We wore the Omega Speedmaster. Everyone was issued one. We had these Velcro bands on it fit over your spacesuit. And we used it a lot. It kept us on time on the lunar surface. You know, timing those burns was very important. And it was really an important piece of equipment.
And you left a picture of your family.
I did. One of the final things I did on the moon was to drop this picture and then took the picture of the picture.
So this is what you left.
That's what I left, yeah.
It's an unfortunate fashion time, isn't
right,
it?
yeah, it was awful.
It's like, oh man, we'd all like that period back.
Guidance is internal. 12, 11.
What's it like
10, 9.
when those engines first crack up?
I was expecting a lot of noise, but you can imagine you're 360 feet above these engines, and the engines are moving, stabilizing for your trajectory to get you off. So as we lifted off, mission control, tower clear, we started listening to Houston and John, we're go, and Houston, you're go. But I found out later from my flight surgeon at liftoff, my heart was 144. And I was excited.
Yeah.
John, the commander, his heartbeat was 70.
So he was like, he was the right guy
buddy.
to be. The fascination is that at the time it was the most modern of all things, but you look at it now and you think, wow.
Yeah. It's good technology though. I mean, this rocket never had a failure.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. The first stage here, we're looking at 5 engines. Each engine produced 1.5 million pounds of thrust. And the ones on the circumference gimbal, they move to control the trajectory.
So now the center engine didn't move.
It was fixed.
Right. This entire piece was all just filled with fuel.
Yeah, it had kerosene and oxygen was the fuel. The whole vehicle weighed 6.5 million pounds, and the engines were producing 7.5 million pounds. So you had 7.5 pushing 6.5. So the acceleration was very slow at first, but the vibration was
crazy.
Crazy.
And then at what point does it start to hit maximum speed?
The first stage, you're about 8,000 miles an hour.
So here we are. This is the end of the first stage right here.
That's right. And there was a big, it was, of course, bolted together to the second stage. And when it shut down, you had separation, and it was a big explosive charge.
To blow it off.
To blow it off.
And could you feel that?
In effect, you could, because you went from 4.5 Gs to 0, just like that.
So now, if you look back at this, we've been walking for a long time,
Yeah.
and this is just to get you 35 miles in the air.
That's right. When this thing dropped off, we'd burned up 4.5 million pounds of fuel in this first stage.
Right.
The second stage ignited, and it was 5 engines. It produced 1 million pounds of thrust, and it dropped off at 100 miles, and you were probably 12,000 miles an hour. Then the third stage ignited, which was 1 engine, and it had, 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it accelerated you into orbital speed, but around 17,000 miles an hour, and you're on your way to the moon. The Apollo trajectory took about 3 days to get you to the moon.
The lunar module literally looks like tin foil.
But when it pressurizes, like a soda can,
Right.
it gets real strong.
Yeah.
But with it's unpressurized, it crinkles.
Isn't that funny?
It's actually thermal protection system. So a lot of the solar heat is reflected and
All the things we got, these are, the firemen use this now in a fire. They
Right.
they wrap themselves
Yeah.
up with the same stuff. It's
good
just,
stuff.
now what are the long pieces here?
Those were electrical probes, and when they touched the moon, it turned on a light, and you could hear Buzz Aldrin say, "Contact."
Contact light. Okay, engine stop.
You shut the engine down, and you drop in 5 or
Yeah.
6 feet.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I don't think Neil told anybody what he was going to say. but how he arrived at that line, I don't think it could have been more appropriate.
Couldn't be more perfect. It took it from this American incredible victory to including the whole world.
Yeah.
You know, it is such a source of pride. You know, there were things that brought us together, and that was one of them.
Yeah.
It brought the world together. It represents to me the best of us. That's where you said, I know I can do it, and if I can't, it's worth trying. You know, those are those things that make us very proud. You know, you are someone who makes us very proud.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great experience. It was a humbling experience to be involved in the program, especially in mission control. To see all of the 400,000 people putting their effort to get those three guys sitting up on top of that rocket, get to the moon, and to return safely.
Get back.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming. Okay. I'm at the foot of the ladder. The LEM footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine.